Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. I am your host, Ed Dentzel. It's Friday night. You made it. Congratulations. You made it through St. Patrick's Day, I guess. I was telling somebody yesterday during St. Patrick's Day that I feel the least amount Irish on St. Patrick's Day. Of course, I don't really feel Irish at all. I'm an American. I don't really care that much where my ancestry lies. Frankly, I'm really not even that interested in it, to be totally honest. Just me. Maybe I'm not the sentimental type. I don't know. I could be from Ireland, England, Germany, China, Russia, the Middle East, Japan. It would all be the same to me, and it would all be pretty much irrelevant. And when I see people getting together for St. Patrick's Day, March 17th, every year, I'm like, oh yeah, I don't have anything in common with this holiday at all. If there was a holiday, something like this, where nobody drank, nobody got crazy, there wasn't any karaoke, there was no kind of folk music or anything, that would be the holiday for whatever country would celebrate that way, would probably be what my ancestry would be the closest to. That's what I would identify with the most, because that's just kind of who I am. So I was just telling this person that I'm looking around at all these people wearing green and the shamrocks and all of that. And I'm like, I just don't have anything in common with any of it. It just reminds me of how much I am not Irish in my behavior or my thinking. Of course, as we know, a lot of non-Irish people take part in St. Patrick's Day as well. So what does it even mean? I have no idea. It's like Cinco de Mayo or any of these other ethnic, not religious, but ethnic holidays in which people who have nothing to do with that ethnicity celebrate as well. It's just kind of weird to me. It's like Jewish people celebrating Christmas. I don't get it. Just me, though. An atheist buying things on Christmas. Once again, I don't get it. I don't do anything on Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah, or anything like that. I don't celebrate the solstice. So, just kind of a weird holiday to me. I'm sure there's significance of March 17th, why it's March 17th and it's not May 12th or June 5th or October 3rd. I don't even know why it's March 17th. I can tell you I've never even looked it up, and I do a lot of reading. That's how I feel about St. Patrick's Day. I didn't even mention that during yesterday's show. I suppose I should have done that in yesterday's show, but I didn't get around to it. But for all of you who did celebrate it, I hope that you got home in one piece, you didn't do any drinking and driving, and you didn't wake up this morning with somebody you didn't know. All right? So let's get to the show. I was talking to this political friend of mine. Still haven't been able to get him on the show. I have the technological means to do so, but I think he maybe has a little bit of cold feet, being that he is not in the political world, and there could be a thing here about it, worrying about his business future appearing on a show like this. So, of course, I wouldn't use his name. I think you'd like to hear it because I think it would generate some interesting conversation. I wouldn't use his name, but I think that he has that little bit of a fear going on, which I guess I have to appreciate and I have to understand it. But he and I were talking earlier today about the Never Trump people. I think I told you last week or when I talked to him that I'm a Never Trump person, and he is not there yet. I don't know if he'll ever get to the Never Trump part of it. But he was telling me about a conversation he was having with somebody recently, a guy that he went to high school with. And I don't know this person, but my friend says that this guy is a good guy, good conservative, good Republican, good Christian, and everything else. And when my friend said that he was actually thinking about not voting for Trump and maybe voting for the Libertarian candidate. Of course, not voting for Hillary, but the Libertarian candidate or something like this. This guy, this high school friend, got angry with. I'm not going to say really, but got angry with him, to use my friend's exact words. Got angry with him, and really couldn't believe that my friend wouldn't just go along with the Republican nominee, especially because it's Donald Trump, and this high school friend being a huge Trump supporter. And so this political friend of mine, like I said, I went to college with him, and this was a high school friend that he had that I don't think I've ever met going back to those days. And I told he emailed this message to me, and I emailed back to him. It's funny how this anger word just keeps coming up. And, me being the guy that I am, if somebody's going to self-identify as being a good Christian and things or something like that, and I've told you I'm a Christian, but I don't talk about it that much. I'm not saying it's not part of my life, but I don't think that if somebody was explaining me to somebody else that say, Ed Dentzel, he's this good guy, he's this good Christian guy, that would probably not happen. They'd say I'm a moral guy, a funny guy, friendly guy, a little bit antisocial, a little bit individualistic and things. But even though I'm a Christian, I don't know if that word would come up. But this word came up in this email. And I just said back to my friend, I said, well, having anger is not very Christian-like, no matter who it is. And see, that's really the point here. And I went on to explain to him, you don't need to be angry with something to want to defeat it. And I said this a few months ago. This is when I'm going back to January or something, when this word anger started popping up all the time. When our service members, military members, go into the field with their guns, their jets, their submarines, and they're supposed to kill the enemy, they don't have anger in their hearts. Now, I know, for example, on September 11th, there was a lot of anger out there. A lot of being angry at terrorists, Osama bin Laden, Saddam Hussein, and whoever else the Taliban, whoever else you want to put into that. But when you get around to actually fighting those people, I don't know how much anger is involved. I know that's maybe what we see in the movies, but there's a reason that the military tries to make its members, both men and women, to put it frankly, cold-blooded killers. What does cold-blooded mean? It means without emotion. All right? Because emotion gets in the way of doing what you're assigned to do sometimes. It could keep, like a fear, like the fear, emotional fear, could keep you from doing something. And anger could maybe take it the whole opposite direction of doing too much. And we may have seen that, for example, in the Vietnam War with the My Lai massacre, something like that. You can take it too far the opposite direction. But when you're cold-blooded, it's just the mission and that's it. Now, I know that's tough. It's tough to do. And it's tough to be that way out on the battlefield. But that is the best way to be. We don't talk about service members shooting people and being angry about it, that their motivation is anger. The motivation is justice. And the way they can do it is just seeing that other person as the enemy, not holding any grudges or anything. The mission is kill that person, just do it. So this is why, one more reason why I have always been suspicious of anger as continuing motivation. Anger is something that you feel instantaneously, but it's not a plan. In fact, the more angry you get, probably the more perspective you're going to lose and the more mistakes you're going to make. It's no different than with love. Somehow, sometimes people do a lot of crazy things for love that gets them in trouble. Sometimes love can cause violence. It needs to be tempered. It needs to be kept in perspective. Right? We all know about stalking, right? That is a form of love that's gone out of control, just like anger can get out of control. The best way to be is have control on it and just keep your minds on your mission. Once again, going back to the military analogy. So getting back to this email conversation that I had with this friend of mine and this Christian friend that he had, I said, well, it's not very Christian to hold anger. And getting back to Barack Obama, I'm not angry with Barack Obama. I do not wake up every day with him being president since January 2009 with a burning heart. Just, shaking my fist at the sky and saying, how could this have happened? I don't need to hate him to know that he's wrong. I don't need to hate him to know that I can't think like he does. I don't need to hate him to know that he's a socialist that wants to transform this country into something else that is wrong. I don't need to hate Nancy Pelosi, Harry Reid, or any other liberal to know what I have to do. Right? That's why this word anger bothers me, that it keeps and this isn't the first time, and this isn't the first time this is popped into my head, and a lot of times it doesn't even have to do with Donald Trump. This is just the latest incarnation of it, the latest form of it. Somewhere in the United States at some point, we've determined that anger makes things better. Anger makes things more efficient. Anger is a path to solving something. And it's not. It's not. But I think what has happened is that I'm seeing what has happened in the last 6 to 8 months and realizing that there are a lot of people who have been very comfortable with hate and anger. And especially on our side, regarding Barack Obama, we've gotten very comfortable. The word anger and hatred for Barack Obama and liberals like him has become a way of life the last few years. And it is that continues to this day, and I think that Donald Trump is feasting on that. I think so. Just like politicians and laws don't cure people, anger does not solve problems. In fact, as you can see, under the right circumstances, that anger can be used against you by the right/wrong person. But we've become very comfortable with it. And that worries me. That worries me. And to the point where, hey, I don't know this high school friend that he's talking about, that my friend's talking about, this high school guy that my friend's talking about. I'm sure he is a very good guy. But as I told this friend of mine, it's weird. Here, this friend of mine is kind of in the middle. So he has a friend like me who is a good guy, that is a never Trump guy, and he has this other friend who I don't know that sounds like he's a decent guy, but he's an absolutely Trump guy. And I pointed out to my friend that, I think the big difference is he is the one that is expressing anger. This high school friend is the one that is expressing anger, and I am the one who isn't. I told my friend, it should tell you something. If my friend, my college friend, this political friend of mine, who got me originally into politics over 25 years ago, goes and votes for Donald Trump in November, I'm not going to be angry with him. I'm not. Just have to live with it. I did what I could. Send him some articles just with my thinking upon it. Us talking back and forth. But I'm not going to ever express any anger. Well, hey, you're just stupid. I can't believe you're going to do that. Do you know? I'm not going to raise my voice or anything. I'm just going to try to reason with them. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. It's obvious to me that the polar opposite of me, those instead of never Trump people, the always Trump people on the other side, it's just different. And they are the ones who are harboring all this anger and have become very comfortable with it. And I was talking a couple days ago about how it seems now that the difference in the Republican side is not so much an ideological difference between big government, small government, establishment and non-establishment, grassroots, the inner beltway crowd or something like that. It's come down to those people that are very comfortable sitting in their anger and bathing in it and swimming in it, and those who just look at the topics a little bit more rationally. That's what it's come down to. The people who enjoy the riots that are held, because it's a sign that they see those riots, those Trump supporters, and Trump himself, they see those riots as a sign that their anger is working. Remember that. Whereas us on this side see the riots and the anger that goes along with it, or the anger came first, chicken or the egg. And we see a bunch of people who have completely lost perspective. And lost the idea that politics, at least on the Republican side, is supposed to be handled in a civil way. That's where the split is now. Because it's not along political lines, because I know that there are a bunch of people who think exactly like I do who are supporting Donald Trump. We could go right down the list of gun rights and abortion or being pro-life, all of it, and would agree on most of it. So it's not ideological, and even immigration would probably agree, but it's that anger issue. It's that ticked off hatred issue. And acting upon it. That's the difference now. And it's funny, just as I told this friend of mine, that when we embrace hatred in our lives, not just having to do with politics, it's funny how that spreads. When you get comfortable with feeling bad all the time, it's funny how it spreads into other parts of your life. You know, hating your next door neighbor, hating your boss, hating your job, you're angry with this, angry with that, and we've all done it in our lives. We displace our anger. Something goes wrong at work, but you can't give your boss a hard time because you think you'll be fired. You go home and you yell at your kids for no reason. That's the kind of stuff that I mean. This is what's going on in American politics right now. A bunch of people who have been angry for the last 7 years about Barack Obama have been very comfortable with hating him, and now they're taking it out on people who really had nothing to do with Barack Obama. And that would be us. The rest of us. That's what's going on. It was very interesting when like I said, this friend of mine told me about his friend getting angry with my buddy. This high school guy getting friend with this friend of mine from college. It really opened my eyes to all of this. One more thing. It's one of those, I've said it before, it's one of those points where you think that you've talked all you can about a topic, and then something else pops up, and you're like, oh yeah, that's right, I forgot all about that. Yeah, that's true. Wow. And I hope for all of you people that are like the friend of mine who are kind of on the fence right now, you're thinking, well, Donald Trump's going to be the nominee. What do I do? What do I do? I got the always Trump. I have to be faithful to the party. You got all the always Trump people over here. And then you got the never Trump people over here. In one field, and the always Trump people in this other field, and this person's standing on the fence. Those kinds of people need to look at how they're trying to be persuaded. Who do they think are the more civilized people? Who are the more rational people? Who are the people that are coming to their decisions not based on emotion, but just on values and character? Because as much as we hate it, we love to give in to our anger. And when we want to feel that anger in our lives, it's funny how so quickly we want to throw our character and our values right out the window. Just to act on that anger and make us feel good for about 10 minutes. Now, in Donald Trump's case, those people who end up voting for him, and if he does get elected, their happiness is going to last longer than 10 minutes, but it's not going to last forever. I need to touch on this for a point, taking me to the next point of, see, the way I see it is the reason these people are so angry, they're happy with it, but they think that their anger is going to be righteous. Even if they admit somehow that their anger may be wrong, they still believe that the ends will justify the means. All right? They're believing that. I've told you I don't believe that. And I've told you that no matter who gets elected in November, I think that I'll be fine. I have a lot more flexibility than the rest of you. Why? I don't have a lot of expenses. I don't have any kids. I'm not anchored to any particular situation. I'm not rich. I'm not poor. Or anything, but I have very, very, very low overhead. But for the rest of you, especially those people who are Trump supporters, you are going to get a rude awakening if he is elected. You're not going to get what you think you're going to get. If that's not obvious from seeing what Donald Trump has done elsewhere in his life, I don't know what to tell you. If you're just going to... the thing is, I know you know it, and you're just ignoring it. And there's not much I can do about that. But he will cause chaos with our allies and our non-allies. And he will make whatever business that you are in much more difficult. Mm-hmm. You are going to wake up every day, and once again, I can live with this because I don't know how much I have to lose in a Trump presidency. I don't like it. I'm not going to vote for him because of the character and conservative issues. Mm-hmm. You're going to vote for him because you're thinking you're going to get something out of it, and I'm telling you're not. And see, what's going to happen is you're going to be angry, he's going to get elected, you're going to feel good about it, then you're going to figure out that you've been double-crossed, and then you're going to be doubly angry. And my fear is then you'll even act more irrationally after that. And then all these conversations, and if you're listening to me here in March of 2016, you're going to be mad at me for not convincing you more. Because I don't think any of you are ever going to blame it on yourself when these things don't go the way you want. we're going to get along with China a lot less. And as good as that may sound, it's going to be horrible. It's going to be horrible. Things are going to be more expensive. I anticipate the unemployment rate will go up. Once again, if Donald Trump wants to go through with all of this and the Congress wants to go along with him, and we'll see what happens there. We'll see a guy, as I've tried to explain a few times, that is going to make your children's future very difficult. Because he's going to continue to ruin relationships the United States has around the world. You got to remember something. The reason that we continue to get along with China, despite what it's doing in the South China Sea and elsewhere, is because we do business with them. Business is the only thing that keeps us as allies. You have to remember that. It's no different than going back to the Cold War days. It's safe to say that if we were doing business with the Soviet Union, we would have gotten along with them more, and maybe there might not have ever been a Cold War. Maybe. Same way with East Germany, all of those communist bloc nations. Had we been doing real business with them, trading with them, Americans free to travel to their countries and their people can travel to our country, we don't have 1/10 of the problems that we had over that time. Now, it wasn't that way because those countries and their leaders didn't want it that way. Remember that. Likewise, today, with something like a country like Iran and these Iran deals, the problem we have there is opening up trade. They want everything that we don't want to give them. They want all our military secrets, and they want to deal with us, but they only want to deal with us on certain things. That's what makes this Iran deal so bad. We're going along with it. All right, so there's a fine line between us dealing with Iran and what we do with China, even though I know China rips us off. Just imagine, let's put it this way, just imagine the kind of relationship, as bad as Mexico is with the drug running and the violence and everything down there, for all the violence that is right next door to us, not a lot of it carries over into the United States. I know a little bit does. I know some does. But given how violent Mexico is, you would think it would be a lot more. And in fact, it would be a lot more if we didn't have a relationship with them, a business relationship with them. As the old saying goes, either goods will be free to pass over borders, or guns will. I guess this is a good time to mention Fast and Furious. In any case, all of that could change overnight. The only thing that keeps us friends with Mexico and China and some of these other countries is the business that we do with them. And if we don't do business with them, then our relationship with them becomes something else. It's like kind of like the relationship you have with your ex-girlfriend or ex-boyfriend. If you get my meaning. You were once a thing, now you're not a thing anymore. You were once happy to be together, and now you're not together, and you despise each other because of it. And American jobs will be affected, and then the posturing will come because that's who Donald Trump is. Once again, I'll live through it because I don't have a lot to lose. All of you have a lot more to lose than I do. Because of the emotional attachments you have, your children, your spouse, and you own a house, I rent, all of that. And this is what I mean when I say that what the average American has to lose compared to what I have to lose. What I do is not as bound to the business in the United States as probably what most of you do. If prices go up at Walmart, I'll figure it out sometime because I don't purchase as much as Walmart as you do. If prices go up and all these things, I'll find a way to deal. You are the ones whose expenses are going to go through the roof. And maybe your jobs will be affected to do, and maybe your hours will be cut back. All of it. That's what I mean by that. I just maybe have a little different lifestyle than most of you do. But I'll figure it out. I'm not saying all of you won't be able to figure it out, but it's going to take a lot more work. And it's going to take time, and you're not going to like it. But that's what will happen if Donald Trump is president. I got to go to the break. You've been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio.
You're listening to Red State Talk Radio, America's premier conservative talk radio network.
You critics don't define our honor. You try to shame us for doing our job. You teach children to fear us, crowds to attack us, and good people to doubt us. But we will never back down from our sworn duty to uphold the Constitution of the United States of America. We wake up every day, put on our badge, strap a gun to our hips, kiss our families goodbye, and put our lives between the law-abiding and any criminal who threatens their rights. We serve people of every color and creed, men, women, and children in violent, dangerous neighborhoods, because they have the same right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness as CEOs, movie stars, and the political elite. We are Americans, and we are the American police officer. We stand with the National Rifle Association of America, and the NRA stands with us. Together, we're freedom's safest place.
I know. We Christians are just as bad as Muslims who fly planes into buildings and video themselves sawing people's heads off and beheading kids and mutilating women and shooting people who draw cartoons. That's right. You better be just as wary of us Christians, because we don't mess around. Don't be insulting our Jesus, because you think Muslims are bad. Oh, man, don't push us. You think the Muslims are bad when they prey on people for insulting Muhammad? You're really going to get it when Christians pray for you for insulting Jesus.
It can be easy to take what we have for granted and not appreciate everything the men and women of law enforcement do for us every day. So to all my heroes out there, I just want to say thank you.
Thank you for protecting my family,
my business,
my kids,
our community.
Thank you for listening to us,
for being there for me, for keeping me safe.
To all those in law enforcement, thank you.
This is Primo Mondoni, host of the Red State Town Hall. Join me Sundays at 11 p.m. Eastern on Red State Talk Radio, the dominant force in conservative internet talk radio. So, lock it in and rip the knob off.
This is Paul Preston, host of Agenda 21 Radio. Join me Monday through Friday on Red State Talk Radio, the dominant force in conservative internet talk radio. So lock it in and rip the knob off.
We're back at the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. I want to wrap up what I was saying in the beginning part of this show and then move on to something else. It's safe for me to say that had somebody else been president the last 7 to 8 years, I'm not saying it would have to have been a Republican, but it could have been a Democrat who didn't raise the ire of so many Republicans, or somebody like that, maybe like a Bill Clinton type of figure, if we want to put it in modern terms, or a Harry Truman, or somebody like that. That where the relationship we have with that guy, the president, would be an adversarial one, but it wouldn't be rooted in just completely despising the guy, which is where what I see all over the place. I guess maybe it's just easy for me because I'm just a policy guy. If you don't think like I do, I don't hate you for it. I just want to make sure that your policies never get enacted. That's it. That's it. And some people aren't like that. And had we had a different kind of Democrat president the last 7-8 years, still liberal, but not quite the same as Barack Obama, I'm not sure that the anger would have been here, existed all these years, these last 7-8 years. And because of that, then there wouldn't have been able to for somebody to come in and use it. I think. It's alternative history. I guess we'll never know for sure. But that's the way I see it. So just to wrap that up, let's move on to something else. You know, it's just weird how this whole situation of the last 8 months. I was listening to the main podcast at Ricochet.com. The one that's hosted by Peter Robinson, Rob Long, and James Lilacs, although it occurs to me that James Lilacs was not involved in this podcast. It was a long podcast this week. It was like 90 minutes show. And was he at the beginning? I'm trying to think. But toward the end, he wasn't there. I don't know if he dropped out or whatever. But so it was mainly just Rob Long and Peter Robinson talking. And they had on there to start the show Haley Barbor. What is he? The former governor of Mississippi. He was the Mississippi governor when Katrina hit. We know that he's been involved in Republican politics for a long time. And then next was Charles Murray, who is a political scientist, an author, kind of a sociologist type of guy. And Haley Barbor says that the Republicans should just get behind Trump if he's the nominee. He took one side of it, and they were not on the show together. One was on, Haley Barbor was on, did his thing, and left. And then Charles Murray came on, said what he had to say. And they both got about at least 20, 25 minutes each. And so here, what was funny, if you don't know, about Haley Barbor being on is that Haley Barbor, I think, might have been been on Ricochet.com like a couple years ago. And he had, to use that anger word, caused a lot of anger on there regarding his support for Thad Cochran in Mississippi. And it was so high to the point that I thought Haley Barbor would never be on Ricochet again. That's how people were repulsed about what Haley Barbor had to say. But he was finally on. I think it's been, like I said, over 2 years since he's been on Ricochet.com. And he said that everybody should support Trump. Republicans should just suck it up. There shouldn't be this Never Trump movement. And it's just, that's what the party's decided. Everybody should just go along with it. Charles Murray gets on there, and he is a very strong Never Trump person. And he talks about it very much the way I talk about it, in terms of giving into a thug, those are my words, going along with a con man, a flim-flam man, a guy who has no moral compass whatsoever. And Charles Murray makes the argument that I do, that it matters if you have your fingerprints on voting for Trump or not. It matters. It really does matter. Whether you vote for him and then you just have to put up with whatever he does, and then being able to say, I just didn't give in. I didn't cave in. I knew evil when I saw it, and I resisted. I didn't go for Hillary Clinton either, but I just totally stayed out of it. It matters. Because it is a test of your character. Because once again, I remind all of you, votes are supposed to be earned. We are not forced to vote in this country. We're not forced. That's why I think voting and people that say it's your first duty and everything, I don't believe that at all. Following the law is our first duty because it's a nation of laws. And if you don't like the laws, then you can go and change them. That's what I believe regarding the United States. You follow the laws. If you don't like them, we have mechanisms to change them. Now, if you can't change them, that's on you. But it's funny, in the comments section that go on for a long time regarding this particular podcast. By the way, the title of the podcast, if you look for it, you can go to ricochet.com, listen to it for free, is called The Raised Middle Finger. It should tell you what the tone was of the show. But it's funny that most people at ricochet.com, despite I know how they felt about Haley Barbor a couple years ago, supporting Thad Cochran instead of the conservative challenger that he had in the primary process, and everything that Haley Barbor did and leaders in the party did to stop this conservative from getting the nomination and supporting Thad Cochran, although there were signs that he didn't know what the heck he was doing, losing his mind. It's funny now that a lot of those other people are now saying that, yep, Haley Barbor's right. We got to go along with Trump. It's funny how this is all flipped around. Haley Barbor, who couldn't find a friend on Ricochet.com 2 years ago, now gets the support of many people in the comments section just because people want to be so loyal to the party. It's so hard to figure out. This is what I mean. It's like some sort of soap opera. Like Days of Our Lives or The Guiding Light or whatever, all those other, the Bold and the Beautiful, all these things that play during the day. And I can tell you for the record, I've never watched one of them once in all my years. Despite how popular, I think seems to me that soap operas reached their heyday in the 1980s, but maybe that's just me. Never watched any of them. I had guy friends of mine in high school that made a point to try to watch them. That's the only thing I know about them. But it's like that. It's like you have changing alliances. You have an ally this week, an enemy next week. The week after that, it's an ally again. It's kind of seems what has happened with Haley Barbor at Ricochet.com. To the point where Charles Murray, I think, is a more respectable man. I think he makes more sense. And he had less friends in the comments section than Haley Barbor did. And the funny part is Charles Murray has been on the Ricochet podcast before, and I know that he's thought very highly of. But then on this particular topic, it seems that that's thrown out the window, and more people are willing to march along with the party as if they have some blood oath, instead of just thinking for themselves. It's so hard. Once again, it's hard for me to understand. It's, I don't know. It's just, I don't know how else to put it. It's hard for me to appreciate, to understand or appreciate how 2 years ago a guy can be run out of Ricochet.com. He got a response very much like Mike Murphy gets it. He's another guy who hasn't been on Ricochet.com for a while simply because everybody seems to hate him. So it tells you what the kind of site of Ricochet.com is. You know, that says a pretty good thing if you don't like Mike Murphy. And to me, it means a lot if you don't like Haley Barbor, especially considering what happened a few years ago and what happened in Mississippi. But now bygones are bygones, and now everybody wants to jump on and just go along with what the party wants. I got to tell you, I'm going to say it again, hard to figure out. I would urge you to go to Ricochet.com and listen to the show for yourself. Listen to both sides, and then there's talking between Peter and Rob at the end by themselves. And see what you think. It's about 90 minutes long. It's one of the longest shows I think they've ever done. But it is interesting. It's just, once again, it's funny how somebody like a Donald Trump can get involved, and then you have all these weird alliances popping up. Even to the point where Lindsey Graham wants to hold a fundraiser for Ted Cruz. As they put it, redstate.com, the other red state, that officially hell has frozen over. But I'm telling you, in the end, I think that most Republican leaders are going to get behind Donald Trump. And that takes me to my next point. Neil Stevens at Red State, once again, the other Red State. If you notice something, do you notice how I don't talk about the Drudge Report anymore? Do you notice how I don't talk about Breitbart.com anymore? I've told you, I'm not going to those sites anymore. I'm not. I talked a little bit about that yesterday, and I've been talking about Breitbart for a long time. If Ben Shapiro, even though I don't even think that highly of him, I'm not saying he's not conservative, but his insights don't seem to me to be that insightful. But he obviously is well known within the conservative movement. But if he has the courage enough to quit that job, then I have courage enough to not go to the site anymore. It was probably much harder for him to quit than me to not go there. If he could do something tough, then I can do something that's less tough. And with the Drudge Report, kind of the same thing. But Neil Stevens at Red State, the other Red State, wrote this article about how if Trump gets the nomination, how he will transform, and he goes through this list of all these different issues, how things will change in a Republican party led by Donald Trump. And once again, I'm not going to go through every issue. You know what they are. But you can see, once you read the article, you'll see that why this embracing of Donald Trump by conservatives makes no sense. If for so long, conservatives within the party have been wanting legitimacy, fighting against those who are a little bit more moderate, what they call people call the establishment, Tea Party versus the establishment, if that means anything. And all conservatives have done by embracing Donald Trump is make sure that the party as a whole becomes more liberal. That's all they've done. And that is the point that Neil Stevens makes in this. I don't know how you can think about it any differently. I don't know how you can listen to what Donald Trump has said and the decisions that he has made over years and years and decide any other way. This is also going back to all those conservative media members and talking about that John Ziegler column. I talked about it yesterday or the day before. The days go by so fast. But I'm not sure when it came out, but I think you could find it. It was at Mediaite, mediaite.com if you want to find it. That's what makes all this conservative media stuff, the bracing of Donald Trump, even more confusing, because all they've done is taken conservatives further away from having overt influence in the party. That's all that's happened here. To the point where you have a viable conservative alternative in Ted Cruz, and to the conservative media, it's not even like he's running. Laura Ingraham, saw an interview with her. Everybody's just going to have to rally around Donald Trump at this point. That's just the way it is. This reminds me of back in 2012, all those supporters of Mitt Romney saying that, well, we just need to rally around Mitt Romney, because if Newt Gingrich and the rest of them continue to ding him like that with all these attack ads, it's just going to make it tougher for Mitt Romney to win in the general election. Whereas what we found out is it was Mitt Romney who made it difficult for Mitt Romney to win in the general election, which is something I knew during that whole time. If Mitt Romney can't handle some attacks from Newt Gingrich and the rest of them who had no money, then how is he going to handle attacks from Barack Obama? Well, what we found out is he couldn't. In Donald Trump's case, he is lagging so far behind the delegates needed to win. Now, he could still get to 1237. But he is the least popular front-runner in the history of the Republican Party. I mean, maybe you can go back way back and find somebody who was along the same lines. But in modern history, let's say in the 20th century onwards, least popular Republican frontrunner in the 20th century onwards. And Laura Ingraham is saying, well, there's other people, they just need to drop out. That is bizarre. And all it tells me is, if you just drop down here from another planet, and you didn't know who Rush Limbaugh was, and you didn't know who Laura Ingraham was, and Ann Coulter and Sean Hannity, and all these other conservative leaders who have completely sold their souls, you know what you'd think? You'd think they weren't conservative at all. You didn't know the 25-year history of any of them. You never heard any of their shows, never heard any of their interviews, never saw any of their writings. You just judged them on who they were supporting. You'd think, you know what? No, they're not conservative. They're not conservative at all. That's what you'd think. And I made this point a month ago or whatever. If all these people, all these now popular quote-unquote conservative media members had supported Donald Trump, a Donald Trump-like character, like person, in the early 90s, none of them would have gone anywhere. None of them. That's what makes this all so distressing. But they'll do it now. Once again, it's something that is hard to comprehend. But John, and I've gotten it right. John Ziegler has gotten it right in his article. Matt K. Lewis, he's gotten it right, what he's been writing about, if you can find him online. He has a book out, I forget the name of it, but a new book out that talks about a lot of this. He gets it right. A lot of people at National Review have gotten it right. I tell you what, National Review and its Never Trump article, or No Trump, whatever they call the Trump issue from a month ago, 2 months ago, is looking better and better and more insightful by the day. Now, there's another part to this, and we'll see how the Trump supporters react to this. The hacking group Anonymous has now stated that it's going to make Donald Trump its enemy. Now, I know Anonymous, you never know which side of something they're going to. They're one of those groups that you could agree with what they do one time and then disagree with them the next time. It's kind of like the ACLU. Even a few times over the course of the last 25 years, we as conservatives, as much as we say we hate the ACLU and it's made up of a bunch of commies, on the other hand, it's funny, once in a while, they do something that is right in line with what we think. So, sometimes you can't make blanket statements like all those people are idiots. But in Anonymous, a group that claims it's, for government transparency and it wants to show all the behind the scenes of what the government's trying to cover up and hacking to people's phones and email to show you what. I mean, keep in mind, the only reason we know anything about Hillary Clinton's email is because of a hack by that Guccifer guy who eventually got caught. Remember that. And, of course, there were maybe some signs that other people ignored, but that was kind of what brought a lot of it on, this hacking. So Anonymous is now going after Donald Trump and some of his supporters and entourage to the point where they've released their social security numbers, phone numbers, addresses. I'm wondering how the Trump supporters feel about that. Because the Anonymous claims they're for the average person that's getting fooled by government. Now they're going after Donald Trump. The average Trump supporter says they're for the transparency in government. They want government to be overturned. They want the Republican Party to be overturned. But they're supporting Donald Trump. So it's funny that two groups that kind of think the same thing are doing the opposite. One wants to expose Donald Trump and make his life difficult. The other group wants to make Trump's life as easy as possible. And I'm sure a lot of these Trump supporters at one time or another supported what Anonymous has done over the years. One more fascinating political alliance or relationship that seems to come and go by day. But I got to go. You can email me at edwarddentzel@reagan.com. Dentzel domain is my Twitter feed. edwarddentzel.com is where you can find all of my old Red State Talk Radio shows. You can also find them at Podbean, Podomatic, SoundCloud, YouTube. edwarddentzel.com/book. You can download the first chapter of my next novel, The Comebacks. You can find me on Facebook and LinkedIn. You're listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. Have a great weekend, everyone.